The SEC and Big Ten are meeting in New Orleans. And no, it's not to have some of that fantastic etouffee that Jimmy grew up on. It is to discuss the future of college football. And I want to throw a couple of things at you. We'll go with first down right now, Jimmy. And that is the notion of more home games in the college football playoff. You like that? Love that? Hate that?
So it would be first-round games to be hosted on campus.
Correct.
Logistically, I would favor it because I just don't think you can incorporate all the bowl games into this equation. And because of that logistical nightmare, I actually thought, I know Tennessee got their butt beat at Ohio State. That was a great scene. There were other great scenes. I can imagine Tennessee hosting a game at Neyland Stadium. What a great atmosphere that would be. So I would be in favor of hosting more playoff games on campus sites.
Yeah, the bowl to me, the bowls are the ex-wife, and the college football playoff is the new hot girlfriend. You just got to move on, Caleb. Thoughts?
Well, okay, so the Bulls, they're talking about what they're talking about. This selection is maybe pushing home games into the second round because one of the things they didn't like logistically last time was that they felt it didn't make sense to. One of the problems with this first playoff that we just had was playing a home game one weekend around Christmas, and then you play a bowl game around New Year's right after that. The problem is if you push it into the second round, the current Bulls that are in the rotation for the playoff, some of them are going to have to be pushed out, and they don't want to be pushed out.
Jimmy, I was joking earlier, but I just really don't see how any traditional bowl fill survives in all this if it goes to 16 teams, excuse me.
How any traditional bowl survives? Well, they're going to have playoff games. So why wouldn't the Fiesta Bowl or the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or Peach Bowl survive if they're hosting a quarterfinal or semifinal national championship game?
Well, they would only host a semi. They would only host
up a little bit. I said traditional bowl system, which would be filtered down. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, Caleb, what was your point?
They would only host like what the SEC and Big Ten have been talking about. They might only host semifinal games at this point, meaning you would only have 2 of those bowl games a year hosting, and the other 4. I mean, let's just be honest. Who's going to watch a Fiesta Bowl game or a Sugar Bowl game or even a Rose Bowl game that's not part of the college football playoff when there's a 16-team playoff?
Well, the fans of those respective schools.
That's about it.
You're limiting your audience considerably. Yeah.
Significantly.
Yeah.
All right, second down, play-in games replace conference title games. This one rubs me the wrong way. Caleb, do you want to explain it for those that maybe don't understand?
Yeah, so this is, Jimmy, this is tied into one of the reports that's happening is the SEC and Big Ten are fighting to strong arm to get a certain number of automatic bids, like 4 per conference. And they also realized, like I warned everybody, that last year's conference title games were devalued and the networks were not happy about that. So they thought rather than have 1 and 2 play for the conference championship, how about we have 4 and 5 play a play-in game to get to the college football playoff instead during the weekend of conference championship?
So you would not have a conference championship game.
Right.
Okay. So who would be your conference champion?
The team that finishes first in the standings.
And if there's a tie?
Then whatever tiebreakers they use they have tiebreakers to figure out who plays for the SEC title. So just whatever tiebreakers they use for the 1 seed. By the way, those teams would go to the college football playoff, so it wouldn't matter as much. Basically, the whole concept of a champion's devalued.
Well, in the past, I mean, I remember Tennessee was in 1989, 4-way tie for championship, so everybody got to celebrate. Everybody was happy. It was a participation. Well, it wasn't quite participation trophy, but that's probably what they would do. If they're tied, they wouldn't go to tiebreaker. They'd just say, okay, we got co-champions. I'm actually intrigued by the play-in. I don't like giving an automatic 4 bids to the Big Ten or the SEC. I think they should earn it. I think there are years when the SEC would qualify for. I also think there are years where if they don't have 4 that qualify, they shouldn't get in. Same with the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten's more at risk with that than the SEC is. Because didn't the SEC have the 13th and 14th and 15th teams that could have gone in, right, this past year?
Right.
Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. So the SEC is more apt to have that many. I don't like that many automatic. If you went to 3 for each, I'm okay with that. 4 to me is too many. But I am intrigued with the play-in for both the Big Ten and the SEC to have a play-in game to see who gets in. I think that would be more fair than just saying, okay, we're going to give 4 automatic bids to each conference.
Let's get to Third Down, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Again, go to facebook.com, follow Sports Treasures TN. Do you think, Jimmy, that the Big Ten is using their television money as leverage against the SEC for auto bid? So I want to go a little bit deeper into this auto bid discussion because you alluded to something that really had me thinking. And that is, I wonder if the Big Ten sees what you see, and that is the SEC is going to get 4 every year. So we've got to guarantee ourselves, what do we have to offset that? We've got more television money. Do you think that helps them in the leverage and negotiations that are ongoing?
I do think it helps them. I don't think it should help them, but I do think it helps them. I don't think how much TV money you got should put an 8-4 team in the playoffs. So, but yeah, do I think they're leveraging it? Yes. Do I like that idea? No.
That, Dave just said that, and wow, Dave, that's one of the best takes I've ever heard someone come up with on the fly, honestly.
Good job, Dave.
Well, because if you read the ESPN Insider report today from
breaking my losing streak. Go ahead.
Heather Dinich has a report today on ESPN, and if you read that report, the section about the auto bids, the SEC was certainly not as keen on it as the Big Ten, and that's intriguing. Now,
really,
yeah, they weren't as keen on it. The Big Ten was the one that were more keen on it. Funny enough,
I'm getting 4 automatic qualifiers.
Okay. They were pushing it a lot harder.
Yeah. All right.
Now it's funny because some people are believing, people are really mad. And Jimmy, I'm sure you know this as well as anybody. I didn't think about this till yesterday, but everybody's getting mad at Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey. Let's be honest. We're absolving university presidents of blame if this goes awry, aren't we? Because Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey answer to the university presidents, don't they, in their conferences?
Yeah, they do. They do. I think what I have observed from presidents, and I'll speak only to the SEC spring meetings, which I've covered forever, all the athletic directors and coaches and Greg Sankey and all, they come up with all these things that they're going to do. And then at the very end of the meeting on Friday, they present it to the presidents and chancellors. And in most cases, they just rubber stamp it. So all they're doing is getting a presentation. This is what we ought to do. And they'll say, oh, okay, sounds good, boom. So they don't really have much input. All they do is say, yes, I'll agree. So, Caleb, I'm going to go with you on that one. I think that's exactly what we're having here. The presidents are kind of staying out of it until the very last minute when they have to make a decision based on recommendations from basically commissioners.
So 4th down, final down, and that is as simple as this. Will we one day see the Big Ten and SEC break away from college football, and will that essentially be the mega conference that Jimmy and I have been talking about for now, goodness, 24 years? Will that be the mega conference if you had to predict, Jimmy?
I'm going to say no. I think they're going to – I think they will remain SEC and Big Ten. I think there are advantages to doing that. And when you say doing that, I mean, you're talking about football only?
I don't even know.
Well,
just
it certainly can't work for all the other sports.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'm going to say no. I think they want to continue to have a separate identity. I also think this, and I feel strongly about this. SEC football coaches, well, football coaches in general, they want to have somebody they can beat, right? They don't want to play 12 difficult games in a single season. They just don't want to do it. They want a Kent State, or they want a weak team, who Akron. They want to mix in some of those games so that they can have a better one-loss record. They do not want to go through the meat grinder of playing a competent opponent every week. So because of that, if they kind of try to break away, they're going to allow other teams to be a part of that so they can fill out a schedule that allows them to win more games.
So going back to the AL-NL thing, you were a baseball fan before me. I was kind of late to the party. But did you feel like the AL and NL had individual identities, even though they were both a part of Major League Baseball?
I did. I did think that. Now, they tried to merge that a little bit. In other words, they set up, and it wasn't, I don't know how many games a year, maybe 30 games a year where they would cross over. So the Yankees would play the Mets, Astros would play the Rangers at that time. So they would have crossover games like that so that fans could enjoy watching the other league play. But I did think there was a separation. And there was a time when I thought the Major League Baseball game had some substance to it. I enjoyed watching them. And there were some bragging rights. Now, that was in the 60s, 70s, 80s. That no longer exists in that regard. But I do think there's a little identification with each league. So, and I guess you're comparing it a little bit to the SEC and the Big Ten, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm shooting for. But there were rule differences that made it different in American League and National League, right?
The DH.
The DH.
Yeah, that's correct. So that was a part of it.
And you wouldn't suddenly take out punting like Caleb would suggest.
I don't know. I would take it. No, I don't think punting is good strategy. I would take out field goal kicking, but
be interesting. Jimmy, are you endorsing no field goal kicking?
No, come on, Caleb.
Sorry. Jimmy, on this front, though, I did want to ask you this with this, because the thing that disturbs me about it is the SEC, and particularly the Big Ten, fighting for the 4 automatic bids, and then they're meeting this week. So basically, whatever the SEC and Big Ten decide at today's meeting is going to be what the 2026 playoff looks like. They strong arm everybody else.
Yeah. Agreed.
My problem with the auto bids, and I wanted to know your thoughts on this, is in their mind, and this is what Ross Dellinger reported on Sunday, if they can get the auto bids, then there will be more high marquee non-conference games, because losing a non-conference game to Ohio State won't hurt you, because all that matters is where you stand in your conference. But if all that matters is where you stand in your conference, that non-conference game has no marquee value to it, does it? Because it's not going to affect the playoff race at all, right?
Yeah, that's true. However they do it, I'm in favor of more marquee matchup games. I'm in favor of Texas going to Michigan, even Alabama going to Wisconsin. And I know Wisconsin wasn't all that good this year, but I like those kind of games. Heck, LSU played USC and UCLA. I like that. My concern was I thought this year the College Football Playoff Selection Committee didn't give a rat about strength of schedule. They just looked at one-loss record. And I thought that would discourage teams from playing more good non-conference games. It would also discourage the SEC from going from 8 conference games to 9, which I'm in favor of. I hope they go to 9. I'm not sure they'll do it. But I'm also reminded that this committee rotates out. You got 3 new members pretty much every year. So just because the committee this year didn't value strength of schedule, maybe next year's committee will put more stock in it. I don't know. But to your point, bottom line, I would like to see more good non-conference matchups. And I do think the SEC and the Big Ten are headed that way. I do think they want to play some non-conference games against each other, which I think would be more attractive for the most part. Look, there are some bottom dwellers in the SEC and the Big Ten. We know that. But I think if you had a matchup like you did in basketball, where the SEC played the ACC, I think if you did a matchup like that in football with the Big Ten and SEC, I think you could have some really, really attractive games.